Exercise 1. In this exercise, we're going to take a look at Inventor 2015. Actually, I know that book there says 2014. I just need to update it. This manual could be found. If you're interested, you could grab it off of Vertanu 1, V-E-R-T-A, N as in Nancy, U-X 1 at .com. Sorry. Okay, in this exercise, we're going to take a look at some of the functionality built into Inventor 2015. We're going to actually build what you see here, this little block, starting with some profiles and extrusions. So let's begin. First of all, when you start up or install Inventor 2015, you have this ability to start working or start learning. If you're a new user, it's probably not a bad idea to start learning, but in this case, that's what we're doing, so we're going to start working actually while we're learning. And then you have the part, assembly, or drawing. The first 4 exercises in the training manual are all just part files. They're the foundations of part modeling. So if you complete those, you'll get a pretty good basis of modeling general parts, more prismatic models. The 5th week we get into, or I should say the 5th lesson, we get into the assemblies, and then the 6th lesson gets into the drawings. And then after that we get into more advanced topics thereafter. But let's begin with a part. Now you could go ahead and click right here on part. You could click on new up here, or I would recommend let's just go up here to new. And then you can see you can pick from English or metric for the templates, and we actually want standard iPart, and hit create. Once it's loaded, you can take a look at the screen here and the way it looks. This is the generic settings, for example. Over on the left, this is the browser. Here, this is going to contain your origins and your planes, which you use to sketch on, as well as axes. There's your center point. Also, the name of the part is listed at the very top. Some systems call this the feature tree. In this case, it's known as the browser. One of the most common things that people do is they don't think they need it, and they hit that little X and it's gone. If that happens to you, you have the ability to go up here to View and User Interface and turn on the browser again. And that's a very common mistake that people make. It's a little buried in there to find the user interface and realize it's the browser you need to turn on. Also, if you fiddle with these little buttons here, you'll notice that you could actually minimize the tab, and it has a tendency to scare new users because if they accidentally click on this, they'll see that it no longer has the environment that they're used to. Just keep toggling this little switch to the minimize panels there until you get through to the one that we want to use in this case, which we're going to just click on sketch here. And this is the ribbon bar. If you go to the iPro, up at the top, the big orange I Pro for Inventor Pro, you'll see that you could save as, export, print is in here as well, new and open. One of the things I'd like to show you first are some of the options. Now these aren't all the options. The drawings have their own options as well, but this is for some of the generic options, like for example how it saves, the general appearance of the screen, your colors, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and I think it's actually, at least for viewing this, it might be best, at least on this screen, especially when I present, I like to go to the actual, let's see here, I'm going to set, instead of background, I'm going to set to one color, and I'm looking for the white background. There we go, the presentation option. And I think this does a pretty nice job of enhancing the screen so you could see it. You don't necessarily have to choose this one. This is just my preference. And then over here on display, we could go further, and then we have the appearance. Use the document settings or use application settings. If you use the document settings, whatever the setting is for that particular document, it's going to come up with that. But I'm going to go to use application settings. This is for the entire system, and go to settings here. And we see there's some options here for model edges, and we could use the part color or one color. I'm going to select one color in black. I like to have the edges as black. Again, that's just a preference. The visual style, there's realistic. Just be aware that takes a little longer sometimes, depending upon your graphics card to update. Or I really like the shaded with edges. Okay. If you like to see ground shadows or object shadows, these are nice enhancements as well, or ground reflections. I do like to turn them on, especially for my students, because it gives them more of a perspective in 3D. It's a little bit easier to see. As far as projection goes, I usually go with orthographic, but if you're going to make photorealistic renderings later, you might want to switch it to projection, and there's a view under the View tab. There's actually an option to do that later. But I don't care to necessarily work in the projection, or I should say perspective view, as it creates a vanishing point, and sometimes it might be a little more difficult to ascertain what you're looking at. But for the most part, some people like that. You could turn that on if you prefer. I prefer not to have it on. And then we can see there's some of these other things like ambient shadows. Has a tendency to make it maybe a little too dark sometimes. Again, that's a preference. And object shadows, if you want to add that. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Also, display quality. If you have a pretty good graphics card, set it to smoother, and it will look nicer. It has basically the edges aren't as jagged and or faceted in some cases. And then we could go to hardware, and again, if you have a good graphics card, especially a professional graphics card like an NVIDIA Quadro or a Fire Pro from ATI, I should say AMD, those are great cards. You can set them to quality, or else if you have issues, like if you're working on a tablet that has maybe a weaker graphics or something like that, you can set it to software graphics, and that will most of the time correct some of the glitches you might get. So again, those are some of the options you have there. I'm going to go ahead, that's pretty good. I'm going to hit OK or apply and then close. And you can see my screen background is now white. Over here in the upper right, you'll hear me sometimes say, okay, let's go home. This is the little home button. This will bring us to like an isometric view of the model. This also allows us to rotate around, which we'll explore that in just a few minutes. Over here are some additional options for viewing and rotation and pan and things like that. But let's take a look at the model we're going to build first of all. And as you can see here, you could go, if you want to get this manual, you could just go to vertanux1.com. Just that vertanux1.com, and everything there is free. This is something I put together, and you could go to instructional manuals and just find the software that you're looking to learn. In this case, Autodesk Inventor. Click on that, and it'll bring up the actual manual that you see there in PDF format. As far as you are welcome, as you read here in the disclaimer, you're welcome to print this manual out, just not sell it for profit. Okay. Also, you'll see any part files that we might need as we go through. You'll see here under the green column are the Inventor files for some of the exercises that we'll go through later. And then we have the videos. If you go to the videos, again in green, Autodesk Inventor, and you can see actually this brings you back to the YouTube page, which you're probably watching this on, and you can see all the different videos that are there. And they generally are in order. Also at the very bottom, you'll usually see the final exam as well as the midterm review, so you actually have those to assist you as well. And there's a link back to the Vertanux1 webpage. When you do get here to the manual, I'm on page 14, and we'll go ahead and start drawing this out. As you can see here, I go to some details here. Number one, we're going to start with the new part file, which we already did. Number two, select the sketch icon. And three, select the rectangle tool. And four, click and drag across from the origin. And then we're going to add some dimensions, and then we'll finish the sketch. So let's begin with that. Okay, so which plane do you want to sketch on? If you just go to the Start 2D Sketch, there is actually a Start 3D Sketch. I don't use those typically in this introductory class, so I'm never gonna ask you to do a 3D sketch, although it is a great tool. That's more of an advanced topic, which would be covered later on. But I'm going to start a 2D sketch. Now, from the browser, if you hit the little plus symbol next to the origin, you'll see you have Y, Z, X, Z, and XY. XY is actually what would be considered your front plane. XZ is your top plane, and YZ is your right plane. We'll go into some more details as to which plane you usually select, but as a theoretically, like for example, if you're working and designing a bottle or a glass or something that sits on a tabletop, so you would actually maybe draw it from the top plane. You may draw the profile and extrude it upward direction. So that's would be the plane you might want to select there. If you're making a wall clock that's mounted on the wall, that might be a good place to start would be the front plane, because that's in front of you. And then something from the right, like if you're designing a stapler, if you look at the profile of a stapler from the front, there's not a whole lot of detail there generally, whereas the right side you might get more detail and you could get more, as I call, bang for the buck with your sketch. So that's just a little bit of what they call design intent when you're working with these softwares. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and sketch this on the XY plane, and if you just move your pointer over the actual border, you could click on it and it will automatically orient itself planar to your screen or parallel to your screen. Now in the center you have your little origin. Avoid accidentally deleting that if you can. Sometimes people click and drag over it and hit the delete key and then that's gone. You can reinsert it, it's just that it's easier if you just don't fiddle with it. Let that be your origin. That's your 0 marker in space, your 0 for X, Y, and Z in this case because of the plane we're drawing on. Now if you take a look up here at the top, here's all your sketch tools. We're going to go ahead and first start with the rectangle. Now if you hit the little arrow underneath rectangle, you'll see there's several different options for rectangles, even polygons, slots, and so on and so forth. There's a 2-point center or just a standard 2-point. We're going to just start at the very top here with just a 2-point. So click on that. Now move your pointer until it locks into that origin. Now because of my screen background might be a little different than yours, I get a little green dot that indicates, it kind of snaps to it. When you get that, you just simply click one time. When I say click, you click once with the left mouse button. Release it and move this up. Now you have two things you could do here. You could start typing immediately. As you can see, the 0.304 inch that I have there, that's actually going to be 3 inches wide, by the way, and then it's going to be the vertical height there, that 0.425 needs to be changed to 5 inches. It takes a little getting used to. You could try this if you like, or you could just add the dimensions manually using the dimension tool at the top there above constraints, so you could use this later. But I'm going to show you how to do it this way right now because this is a nice tool. For example, you can see that 0.3 is kind of changing as I move it. When it's highlighted in blue like that, that means you can start typing a number. So I like to turn on my number lock key on my keyboard. And I'm going to go ahead and type in just 3. You don't have to type in 3.000, unless there's actually like a 3.125 or something you're adding. But in this case, it's just 3 wide. Now, don't hit enter though just yet. You type in 3, and then you'll notice it frees up your mouse pointer, which now you could click on the next dimension, which here I'm just going to click on that one. And when I say click, again, just the left click. Generally, as a rule, when I do my videos, when I just say click, I'm referring to the left mouse button by default. If I will be very sure to say either click on your middle mouse button or your scroll or your right mouse button if I mean you to click on those. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and type in 5 for the vertical. Hit enter. Now here's what you could do. If you want to zoom to fit, right over here you'll see the front box. Go ahead and click right in the center of that front box, and that will zoom to fit the screen. Now there are other options in here. There's zoom to area. There's a zoom all as well. So you have those same options in there too. There's pan. Oops. Now if you notice I accidentally clicked here and I'm still in the rectangle tool, just make sure you hit the escape key on your keyboard. But I'm going to show you in the event that you accidentally draw an extra rectangle and you're like, darn it, that was an accident. Hit escape, and now just click and drag a fence to surround the geometry you don't want. And anything in that envelope, that fence that you created, will be selected. Then you could hit the delete key on your keyboard. You'll notice you could also click on lines individually and delete them as well. But in this case, I just did the easy way. Okay, so I have a 3x5 rectangle. Now be aware of these dimensions. If you click on them and then drag them a little bit, it's a good idea to lay them out as you might want to see them on a drawing, just for the purpose later on, because most of the times many companies still use drawings, and rather than just having them clustered in an area or not offset improperly, if you lay them out nicely, like how you would see them in a print, when you create your drawing, you could actually import those, and actually it will show those as you see them on the screen. So anyway, just saves a little time later on. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit Finish Sketch. Now you don't have to hit Finish Sketch. You could go right to 3D model. Either way is fine. I'm just going to say hit finish sketch now so you know you're out of it. And now here's where I recommend hitting the home button. Now where is home? Remember I said up here, click somewhere like on that box just once, and you'll see a little home appear. Click on the home, and that brings you to an isometric view. Alright, now from this point, we no longer want to be on the sketch ribbon. We want to go to the 3D model ribbon. And then we see there's options here. We're going to go to extrude. Today we're going to just learn about extrusions. So click on extrude. And right away you'll see if there's not multiple profiles or if you have a nice watertight solid, you should get what you see here, a preview of a box. Alright, and it's extruding out in a direction. You'll see you could actually grab this little arrow and drag it out, or you could type in here. This is kind of the quick launch options. Now the quick launch options are very nice. You can just type in a value, but for a new user you might want to familiarize yourself with what some of those buttons do. If you hit this little arrow here above extrude, this brings up a dialog box with more details. It's the same tools, just more details on what they are. So for example, here we have the profile and we get a distance. Notice there's 2 in between. There's some different options in there. We actually want this to be 0.5, so just click on that and type in 0.5, and you can see you can flip the direction backward or forward. So you have direction 1 or direction 2, or symmetric, which divides it evenly on both sides of the plane. Or you could make an asymmetric, meaning that you could make, I want 0.5 on the front, 1 inch on the back. But in this case, we're just going to go in direction 1, 0.5. Now be careful with your output. There's something called surfaces, and surfaces are very useful for making ergonomic shapes and maybe some other types of deals. But we're going to primarily stick with the output being solid. And go ahead and hit OK. Alright, now some of the settings I set up earlier, like my background color, did take effect, but one of the options that I did set was to have the edges show up with a nice black defined topology, which are the edges of the solid. And I'm not seeing that right here, and I'm not seeing some of the other options. So to get those to go here, I believe next time we restart it, we'll probably remember those settings and actually start showing them as I wanted them to. But go to the View tab up at the top here, and this is a good opportunity to show you some of these. So I could turn on shadows, I could turn on reflections. Under Visual Style, as you remember, we selected Shaded with Edges. If you click on that, now you can see the edges here. That's very helpful sometimes when you're working on different models. Under Visual Style, be where there's also Realistic, which gives you a more realistic appearance. There's also Illustration and different options there, but we're going to go with Shade with Edges. At least that's what I'm going to go with. You can do whatever you like. Alright, also here's where you would find Perspective, which gives you a vanishing point. I prefer to work in orthographic, and then later when I make photorealistic renderings, I usually go to Perspective. There's also ground plane and textures. I'm not going to fiddle with those just yet. I'm going to go back to 3D Model, the tab up here. Okay, now we want to add to this. So I'm going to select this face. Now when I click on this face, I can actually sketch on it. If you remember the first time, we selected one of those 3 planes that were up here. But in this case, if we have a flat face, we could sketch on it just about anywhere. You could sketch on this face, the back face, whichever you want. But notice here you have 3 options. There's Edit Extrude. That would allow us to edit that 0.5 depth of the extrusion if you want maybe to go 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch. We also have Edit the Sketch, and you can see the preview of the sketch. That would take us back to the 3x5, and we'd be able to edit those numbers or add to it. Or we could create a sketch, and this is what we want. We actually want to create a new sketch on the surface. It's the same as clicking on the Start 2D Sketch. So I'm going to use the quick launch here, Create Sketch. And again, I'm going to click on the front box just to make it zoom to fit here. Now notice you could scroll in and out with your scroll button on your mouse if you zoom in and out. If you hold the Shift key, by the way, and your middle mouse button, which is the scroll, it actually acts as a mouse, and move your mouse left and right, up and down, you can actually dynamically rotate your model in 3D space. Release both of them, and then just go back to the front view orientation box. I would recommend practicing that for a little bit. If you'd like, you could pause this and actually learn to drive the software. It's very important to be able to rotate and orient it. It only takes a couple minutes to understand how it works. take this time now if you would like. Okay, moving along here. Now I'm going to go to the rectangle tool again. And down at the bottom corner you'll see it easily snaps to this edge. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now over here you can see sometimes it snaps, and in other releases, I don't know why, but sometimes I'm not able to get it to snap onto that edge. And I just want to share with you something in the event that you're unable to get it to snap that edge. I'm going to hit escape first. Be aware there's a project geometry. If you click on project geometry, you can select the face, and what it does is then it makes all those edges selectable, or we could go up to them. I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool, and now you can see the yellow border. At least on mine they're yellow because of the colors I selected. I'm going to click on here and you see it snaps to that edge there. So just be aware, if you ever have difficulty snapping to an edge, use the project geometry tool. Anyhow, in this case I want it to actually snap to this edge, so I'm just going to click there, and now I'm going to go to the dimension tool because I have to add some dimensions. I'm going to click on this line right here to the bottom line, and then just drag this to the center and just to the right, let it float there, and again use dimensioning standards here, click, and make that 1.5. Now you might notice that the colors start to change. Originally everything was black and now we're seeing it as blue. I'm going to hit escape. Now if you're able to move some of this, it would be likely that maybe it didn't snap to the edge, so just be aware of that. In this case it is snapped and it's fully defined. And over here you can see it's fully constrained, no longer needs anything. If it's underdefined, you may not have used the project geometry tool, and thus it might not have locked in that point to this edge. But let's move on. Again, we could use a finished sketch, or we could just go right to 3D model and extrude. Now here because we use that profile tool, or the project tool, it gives you several profiles to choose from, or I should say 2. And we just have to select the one we want. So whichever one turns red in this color, in this case on mine, yours might turn a different color, be aware. Just click, and we can see it will remember the last dimension and add to that. And that's actually the dimension we want, so 0.5 works really well. Hit the green check mark. Now we're going to go ahead and put a hole in. Now there is a hole tool, but I'd like you to familiarize yourself with some of the other tools like the extrude again. So we'll get to the hole tool later, and probably in exercise 4. So go ahead and select this face now. Remember, try and remember which one we started a sketch with. If you don't remember, just glide over. That's edit. We don't want to edit. We don't want to edit the sketch. We want to create a new sketch. So click on that. Again, click on front. And now we could go to the circle tool, and just right about here, note where I'm clicking, click and drag out a 0.75 diameter circle. As you drag it out, before you click the second time, just type in 0.75 and hit enter. If you miss that, go to dimension, click on the edge of the circle and drag it out up here and click to drop it. I'm going to hit escape, and I just want to drag this out there. Okay, now I'm going to go to the dimension tool, and I'm going to click on the center point of that circle to this top edge, drag it to the left, and it's going to be 1 inch. So we have 1 inch dimension off the top edge. Now we click on this edge here to the left edge, drag it straight up, center that dimension, make it 1 inch, and now we could go to 3D model and extrude again. Now again, you get to select which profile you want. So in this case, select inside the circle, and you'll start to see an extrusion occur. Now what we're seeing is it's adding material. We actually wanted to remove material in the opposite direction. So over here, let's take a look at some of the tools. You'll see, first of all, this is the extrude to join. We actually want to cut. There also is intersect, but we don't want that. We're going to go to cut. And for the distance, we could keep it at 0.5, but be aware, during engineering and design, we see a lot of changes roll down. And sometimes things get thickened or thinned out. If we go with the 0.5 on the depth of this hole, when it's always supposed to be a through hole, design intent is our plan on how we want it to update properly, so we don't have to go back and change the depth of the hole every time we change the thickness of the part. So in this case, take a look under extents and hit the little arrow to the right of it, and you'll see an option. There's 2 next, 2 between, and all. Let's go with all. That makes sure it's going to always go through everything. And you can hit OK. Again, if your shift button push down and your middle mouse button push that down, move left, right, up and down, you see you could rotate around. Go back to home up here, and let's add some fillets. Now be aware there's chamfers and fillets. If you go over here to the little arrow, there's fillets and chamfers are underneath. We're going to first start with fillets, so go to the fillet tool. And again, let's, because we're novice users here, or just beginners I should say, click on this little arrow to give you some of the more specific options versus the quick launch, which is very nice, but in this case I just want you to learn a little bit more here. Let's set the radius to 1 inch. Now take your pointer and get to this edge. Beware, if you're used to AutoCAD, you're used to selecting the adjacent lines. You don't have to do that here. You could just select the edge because it's a solid. It's just like in real life. If you're going to put a radius or a round on something, you use a file, and where would you hit the file? You wouldn't hit it on these two edges. You would hit this edge with the file here. So click on that. While you're still in this mode, click on this edge down here. And you could go ahead and hit OK here, or you could even hit the green check mark over here. Alright, now underneath fillet, hit the little arrow and you'll find chamfer. Click on chamfer. We'll keep the chamfered edges at 0.125. And for this, click on this edge here. Now, just to take a look at what we have here for chamfers. Beware, chamfers, in this case, we have a D to D, which is distance to distance. So if they're both the equal distance, in other words, they're tied together, both 0.125 from the X, 0.125 from the Y, we get a 45-degree angle automatically. If you need a different angle, that's where you go to distance and angle. Okay, so, but in this case, let's keep it at distance 0.125. Now select this edge too, and hit OK. Alright, if you hold Shift and the middle button, drag it around, and try and rotate it so you see this corner here. You could also click on the back little square there in the upper right here, and that will bring you to this corner. And I want you to get to this corner because we're going to shell this part. The shell tool, which you'll find up here, click on shell, you have the ability to remove faces, and you select what you want. In this case, let's make the shell thickness 0.06 or 60,000. So make sure you hit your decimal place there. And don't hit OK just yet. If you hit OK, you'll see the browser will have a shell in it already, which you just right click and you edit that. But if you didn't hit enter yet, that's a good thing. Notice there's different options for inside and outside as well as both sides. We just want the standard inside, and we select the faces that we want to remove. So this face right here, then this side face, and this face over here. You'll see a preview. Go ahead and hit OK. Alright. Now notice, because this is a parametric modeler, you have the ability on the left to edit any of these features. So you could always right click on the original extrusion, and you could edit the feature or edit the sketch. Even right click on the shell, you could edit that feature. Just to show you, it brings us back here. So if you wanted to thicken it, make it 0.062 just for the heck of it, and thus we are able to make it thicker. So everything can be edited. Alright, now at this point, let's rotate it back around, and we want to add some colors to this. So I'd like to show you some of the tools here. We'll just go with the very generic here. Click on generic, and you'll notice you could click on gold or glass or nylon. There's a lot of different materials to select from. I'm going to go with gold, and you'll see the part will transform to more of a gold color. Now if you're going to make a portfolio, a good idea is to go to View and go, instead of orthographics, select Perspective. That gives a vanishing point, makes it look more realistic. Also under Visual Style, you could click on Realistic, and it gives it a more realistic appearance there, as you can see. Okay, there's much more to making renderings and so on. You could click on Ray Tracing, which will even give you an improved look. Looks more realistic, and you see here over on the right, Ray Tracing takes a while, but you could set it up to be interactive or good or best quality. Remember, the higher you set it, the longer it's going to take to render that. but I'm going to set mine back to just the standard visual style, shaded with edges, and perspective, turn that off to orthographic. And go ahead and save that, clicking on the little diskette up here, or Control S is the fast key, or you could go to the iPro. You could either print it out if you have a printer, or you could save it, or even save as. I'm going to save, and I'm going to go ahead and name this as capital E1. And that's pretty much the end of exercise 1. Continue watching this if you'd like to see some of the labs. There's 2 labs that are in the manual here. If we go back to the instructional manual, you could see once you get past this lesson here, oops, take a little time to update. It says here, now finished, now try lab 1. And lab 1 looks like a big letter F. Okay. And there's also lab 1B. Generally, I recommend trying these on your own because they're similar. I mean, you're using the same tools pretty much as what we just learned, and it's a good practice for yourself. But continue to stay tuned on this video to watch me do those. So in fact, I'll start them now. I'm going to go to New up here, again, Standard I Part, Create. For the F, I'm going to go and I'm going to start a 2D sketch on the XY plane, which is our front plane. Now I could take the line tool and I could draw this out. Now let me go back to the manual here and let's take a look. We have a 3.5 by 2 inch, and then it goes down to 1. So let's do that. Start down here, click and drag it up. You can type in 3.5, hit enter. Just make sure you're directly vertical. Now I'm scrolling in and out with my scroll button to zoom. Remember, you could always click on front as well, and that will zoom to fit. Now I'm going to go across, and this is 2 inches, so make sure you snap 90 degrees and just type in 2 up here. Hit enter. Drag it down. Make sure it's 90 degrees again. Type in 1. Hit enter. Now this one, I don't think there's a dimension on the print for it. You have to actually get it from, oh, actually, I think it does come up to 1 inch, but it's off of the left edge. So we're not going to put a dimension in. So just click, like get this over here somewhere, make sure it's 90 degrees, click, drag it down. Next one as well, we'll just click, because I have a baseline dimension, I don't know the exact dimension. I think it is actually 0.75. But then align yourself to this edge, click, drag it down. Click here, drag it down. This one goes in a little bit deeper, click. Then attach it to this bottom edge of the crosshairs, click, and connect it to the origin. When you get the green dot, click, and now hit escape on your keyboard. Now we could add some dimensions to this. So let's go to the dimension tool, and let's add them according to our book. And here we can see it's 1.75 and 2.5. So from this edge here to this edge, drag it out, 1.75. And then from this top edge to this bottom edge, 2.5. Take a look at the book. We have 0.85 and 1. So this, we could click on this, drag it down, 0.85. And then from this edge to this edge, that'll be 1. And now you can see we're fully constrained. You might wonder, like, how did this node lock in? It captured an automatic relationship that's directly vertical to this, so it's collinear essentially. And so we didn't need to add that. But if you didn't get that lined up the first time, be aware you could add the vertical constraint, or actually coincident. If you select both, it looks as if it's an infinite length line, and it should align itself. Alright, now we could go to 3D Model, Extrude. Again, I'm going to click on Home here so I can see it a little bit better. And the thickness for this is 0.5. Go ahead and click on the Save, and this is going to be Lab 1. Now let's move on to Lab 1B. Go to the New, Standard I Part, Create. And we're going to go ahead and start a 2D sketch. Now this one might work really well on our top plane, which is the XZ plane. So if you get to this plane, click on it, and it will orient yourself here. Also, the model is symmetric, even though in the print that I provide, which is a terrible print, I apologize for it, you'll see I have an origin base. When I first wrote this lesson years ago, I used to like to have it locked into the origin, then you would learn how to center things. But in this case, there's a tool which really comes in handy here under rectangle, and it's the 2-point center rectangle, which I'd like you to give it a try right now. Click on 2-point center. Click on that center point first, which is the center of the crosshairs, and drag it out. Now, let's take a look here. The box is supposed to be 3 by 5. So on the right, we go ahead and type in, it's going to be 3 inches high. And then click on that next one, and that's going to be 5 inches wide. And there we go, 3 by 5. Remember, if you didn't add those in quick enough, you can always go to dimension and click on both lines, and then go ahead and add them yourself. Okay, now you could add the circles here. You could add them individually, like just click on the circle tool, and do not, whatever you do, stay away from this center line or any of these center lines. Those don't help you right now. You want to make sure you draw away from those. Click. Don't even snap this to it, because look at that, it gets a tangent relationship. Stay away from that. And this is supposed to be 0.5. Now go to dimension and locate it. Click on the center point to this top edge, and that's going to be 0.75 off that top edge. Click on this center point to this left edge, and that's going to be 0.75. Now in the book, I recommend doing that for all the dimensions, all 4 corners, which you can do. It's good practice. However, I'm going to show you how to mirror, and I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Mirroring is usually, you learn this in exercise 2, but this will give you a little heads up to it, those of you who like to do things the quicker way. I'm going to go to the line tool here, and over here, when you want to create a center line, click on center line. There's also construction lines. They both do the same thing in this case. Click on center line, and let's draw a vertical center line from the center, just straight up like that, and then hit escape. Click on line again. Click on that center point, drag out a nice center line here. Be aware you could always right click too, and you can hit OK there, and it will exit you out. Also, there's end chain too. But anyway, the reason I drew the 2 center lines is because that's the primary ingredient needed to mirror anything over. Now you can't mirror on both sides at one time, so just be aware of that too. But here I'm going to go, and we're going to go to the mirror tool up here above pattern. Click on mirror. Now right now it's already depressed for me, the select button. I select the circle. Don't select the center point. That doesn't always work. Okay, now click on this little button for the mirror line. Which line do you want to mirror it across? Remember, you can't do both at one time, just one at a time. Click on the vertical. I'll just pick that one and hit apply. You'll see it creates a mirrored feature on the other side. Let's do this again. Select both circles now. Click on mirror line, and this time select the horizontal center line. Hit apply, and done. You do not need to add dimensions to those, because those have a relationship back to a constraint. If you click on any of these, you'll see that it's a symmetric constraint that relays back to that. Also, do not delete the center lines or construction lines. If you didn't use them, you're welcome to delete them, but if you used them for a mirror or anything else, if you delete those, there's a dependency that on those, and it will delete any geometry associated with them. So just be aware. You could leave them in. They don't hurt anything. If you want to clean up your print, I don't recommend deleting them unless they're not being used for anything. Okay, let's go to 3D model. Notice I didn't put the big circle in, because it's a waste of time, as you'll see here in a second, because we're going to have to put it in later anyway. Go to Extrude. I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to click that profile, and that is supposed to be, we're going to make it 1.5 inches. Okay, now we're trying to put in this cutout here. Notice I did the 1.5, the full thickness. That way I could draw a little rectangle on the side or on the top and just cut it to the depth I need it to be, which is 1 inch deep, and it's 1.5 wide, and it's centered. Because I centered this, it makes my life pretty easy. Watch this. I'm going to go ahead and click on the surface at the top. I'm going to attack it from the top. You can attack it from the side if you like. The top's probably a little bit easier because you have that center there. I could use the center rectangle, click on that, and just lock into that edge. Again, if you're not able to lock into that edge, remember you could go to the project tool up here and select that edge and it will project it. In this case, I'm able to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that edge, and then I'm going to go to dimension, and this is a little hard when there's a line on top of a line. I want to dimension that blue line that you see there, but unfortunately I'm not able to get to, so I'm just going to select these two, drag it up. That's going to be 1.5, and it's already centered. I'm going to go home here. I'm going to go to 3D model, extrude. Now, in this case, it only needs to be just one. And remember, we could use these tools here. Now that we know what these are, there's cut. And sometimes you have to flip it. Sometimes it's smart, other times it's not so smart. In this case, click on direction 2 just to ensure that you see the preview, and you can hit the green check mark. All right, that completes that exercise, or that lab. That's lab 1B. But I'm going to show you a few more things. Have a little fun with this. Underneath chamfer, hit the little arrow and go to fillet and set the rounds maybe to 0.5. Oops. And select these 4 corners. And hit actually, you could select these corners too, or these inside edges. Hit OK. Now go to chamfer. Keep at 0.125, select that edge and this edge, hit OK. We could put a chamfer on these as well, kind of like a countersink. The hole tool does that for you, which is really nice, but there you go. And we'll put fillet, maybe around that edge, maybe not so big. Let's change it to 0.125. Alright, you could rotate with this tool too. If you just grab this with the left mouse button, drag it. You could drag it around. So if you don't always like using your little shift key and the middle button, this could drag around. Okay, now I'm going to go to shell again, and we'll keep it at 0.1 and just select this face to hollow it out and hit OK. And there we have our model. Again, for some of the colors, you have the ability to go in here and select something. You can make a glass. The glass is difficult to render. You can make a good rendering, but it takes a lot of time in this software to get it set up and learn it, which I'll try and show some little tricks here. But you can feel free to select some of these other plastics. You also have the ability to select different colors from a library of colors. So for example, say I want dark green, I'm going to double click on that. And that shows up here. And you have the ability to select the face and then change that color. Let's go with red. Double click on it. Oops. Get that over there. Click on this face. Click on the red again. And so you could actually change individual faces and so on and so forth, the different colors. Again, you could go to View, Visual Style, you could go to Realistic, Orthographic, change it to Perspective, and you could also do Ray Tracing if you like. And there, that apparently was a red glass. Looks like. And there we have a nice photorealistic rendering. I wouldn't say it's nice, but it's something. You would definitely want to put a little more effort into it for a portfolio, but as you can see, there's some little tools there for you. And that concludes exercise 1.